Welcome to the game. I'm Russ Cohen. We've got Mike Augello. Mike, how are you?
Russ Cohen, my man.
We did try and get Nico on, but didn't happen. Hopefully all is well with him, but we'll get him on for the next one. So the Braves won the World Series. You know, neither you or I are going to click our heels over that, but we'll give them their respect and say that, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm going to click my heels over because I should say I want to dance on the grave of the Houston cheaters because
that's fine.
I mean, but you know, I mean, the funny thing is, I have to say this, it's like I didn't realize until they were talking about it today that they only had 88 wins. You know, they were a team that at the trade deadline loaded up because they lost Acuna and they lost a couple other players, and they loaded up with guys who could fill spots like Soler, and obviously he had a great World Series and a great playoff. But yeah, they only had 88. It's sort of like that Cardinals team from a while back that just barely snuck into the playoffs and then got hot at the right time and won it.
Yeah, the 64 Cardinals.
The 64 Cardinals, but the Cardinals that beat, I think, Texas or Detroit, whatever. Okay. One of the they were not particularly good. They just barely got in, and then they got real hot.
Yeah, well, we have to give them credit though, because like they picked up Eddie Rosario for Pablo Sandoval, and they got cash back for it. Like they actually got. I mean, it's one of the most unbelievable deals if you think about it, considering Rosario was the NLCS MVP, right? So you had that. You picked up Soler.
I mean, you'd think that they would have to send cash with Sandoval to feed him.
I was amazed, and honestly, I was amazed that they were able to do it and then to keep going. But they did have pretty good pitching. I mean, Morton didn't break his leg until the World Series, so. That was, a big deal to have him and Fried. That's, the 1-2 was good. And then, they have, I always want to call him Ian Kennedy, and there's Ian Kennedy who pitched for the Yankees. I always want to call him that, though.
Well, the funny thing is, the way I remember his name is obviously the lead singer and flautist for Jethro Tull was Ian Anderson.
It's Ian Anderson, but Ian Kennedy is what always comes out of my mouth. But they had better pitching, so that's the reason why when I wrote for Full Press, I gave the pathway for the Braves to win. But then, really, honestly, when Mick Kern had me on Sirius before the series started, and he just says to me out of the blue, "Who's winning the World Series?" Doesn't give me any time to think, and I did say Atlanta. I did feel like the big edge was, hey, Soler was going to be able to play DH, and that's a massive deal to get that extra power bat in the lineup. So they win it. Today is a bad day for Mets and Phillies fans because they both held on to first place, Mets for much longer, but they both held on to it and both relinquished it, and neither team was able to keep their team in it by getting the right players. So that's going to be a sore spot, for them today. And then the other thing is when you look at the Braves now, it's like, well, what are they going to do next year? Joe Buck made and I wrote about this today for Full Press, the inappropriate comment about Freddie Freeman, because we don't know he's going anywhere. We don't know if he'll even, reach free agency. Maybe they'll come to an agreement now shortly after because they've won it all. Who knows?
Inappropriate, but truthful. I mean, he is a free agent. I didn't realize he was a free agent, but it could have been his last. I mean, do you want to bring that up at that particular time when everything is joyous in Mudville?
No.
You probably should have just kept your mouth shut. But it was potentially a truthful statement. But I have to say, because I wrote for Full Press, it's sort of the companion piece of what Houston had to do to win. And okay, Atlanta's staff was superior to Houston's, but Atlanta's staff was not unbeatable. Houston's staff was putrid, was terrible. Yes. I mean, Verlander was out for the entire year, understood. Greinke is, 3,000 years old. McCullers got hurt. So, I mean, there are reasons.
Well, I mean, Soroka was out for Atlanta too. I didn't even write about that because it was just so far gone at that point.
But when you're going into a World Series and your pitching staff is, Luis Garcia, Urquidy, an old Greinke. I mean, my God, how did they get there is the question I have.
A lot of
So, but they
hitting.
did. Yeah, no, and that was, and what I wrote was, they're going to have to get the same kind of hitting that they got in the Boston series when they were trailing 2-1. They won the 3 games by out hitting the Red Sox, and guys like Alvarez and Correa and Altuve, and honestly, I mean, they did not come through offensively except for I think game 2 where game 2 where they knocked Fried out after giving, I think it was 4 or 5 runs, and then game 5 to stay alive. But really, their offense was not really consequential for the majority of the series.
No, but here's the 2 biggest subjects now that'll be talked about. One is the universal DH, because I can't tell you how much whining I heard about the universal DH during this whole World Series, and I'm still going to fight it. And then 2, the eventual work stoppage, which I do believe will at least be an interruption, because I don't think they're going to come to a quick agreement. So, those are the 2 big subjects right now that face baseball, because it's going to affect how the teams go about the winter meetings. I mean, other than like a team like the Mets who need a manager in the front office because they're just going to get paid throughout this whole process anyhow, because, Steve Cohen's a billionaire, he could afford it. But as far as locking in players that may not play this year, teams aren't going to get that aggressive with that.
Well, there are 2 schools of thought here. That, apparently the CBA ends, I believe, on December the 1st. That
Right.
these general managers know that, and if they want to make moves, they're going to make their moves prior to December 1st because, as you said, they don't know when this lockout or when this strike or whatever you're going to call it is going to end, and they can't really wait until a week in between the agreement and the beginning of spring training, or it may not even be spring training, maybe summer training. So, you may see a flurry of moves and signings in a 2 to 3 week span because these teams have to get all their business done in that time period, or they just wait and, then it's going to be that flurry before the beginning of their training, of whatever training it is. So I don't know.
I think it's going to be a lot of that. You might see a couple of signings for some owners that don't care about the cash, but I don't think they're going to go fully crazy. But I could be wrong. You might be right. There's not going to be a luxury tax until they come up with an agreement, so that is something. Now, I don't know what they do though. If your team spends $250 and then all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, we've just come to an agreement. The luxury tax is $210."
Right. Well, see, and right. I mean, the luxury tax is $205, and the Yankee fans will know that very, very well. But the thing is, if you all of a sudden you come in without a luxury tax, or if you come with whatever it's a soft cap or something. I mean, I don't know what will be agreed to. I mean, there could be a floor because they're the big teams are tiring of feeding money to Pittsburgh and Kansas City and then not seeing it being used just as a guarantee of profits. So, I mean, yeah, that could put a chill on what, say, the Yankees or the Blue Jays or some of these teams who want to make moves can do because they don't know what the rules of the game are going to be.
True, and that's a big factor. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how the CBA is formed. We'll see because and I gave a little bit of a bump up for the luxury tax because I do believe there'll still be one. We'll see how hesitant or non-hesitant teams will be. We'll see when Rob Manfred actually wants to talk about this subject because they haven't said boo about it really all season. So it's going to start hitting right after the parade.
Well, why would it change? Why would it change now? Why would he change now in terms of, I think he's going to stay mum on the subject because, because I don't think he knows what's going to happen. So
No, but the idea is if you don't say anything and then all of a sudden you get the other side saying, well, there's no negotiation and we're just, we're not going to do anything right now. It's not going to bode well for teams trying to sell tickets in December, which is the time that they start trying to sell season tickets for the next season.
Sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I know that, listening to Yankee games
and spring training, right? Those places, are dependent on people buying the early spring training tickets, who's going to buy them?
Oh, nobody. I mean, if you're booking a trip for February in Sarasota or Tampa, you're stupid because more than likely they're not going to be playing. So, I mean,
Right.
these sides have dug in. And, I think the players, want to break the owners, and I think the owners want to break the players.
Yeah,
And I
it's a
think
nice little.
Yeah. Oh, it's going to be beautiful.
It's a nice little thing. All right.
Could
So,
be out open.
yeah. So some other news. Jacob deGrom was talking the other day, and the whole saga with him was interesting. He always takes responsibility. I give the guy credit. He's like, look, it's on me. I wasn't there for the team. That's why we didn't win. I mean, that's a reason. It's not the biggest reason, but it's a reason, sure. But we find out that when he got his MRI, that like he was on his stomach and his bad arm elbow was in the air for an hour. And I'm thinking there had to be a better way to do this.
Yeah, when I heard that story, and I've had MRIs, and I'm sure you have too.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to stay still. And yeah, I mean, when I had it done, it was for a leg situation, not an arm. But who in their right mind has a guy who has a hurt arm have him hold up the arm for an hour?
I've never heard of it before.
It's totally asinine. I mean, only the Mets, really, only the friggin' Mets could this happen.
It does seem that way, and Met fans are resigned to that kind of stuff, and it's just part of the maddening process of dealing with that team and their doctors and lack of medical expertise that they just show over and over again. Like it's crazy, and this is your number one guy, and remember this. He's got an opt-out in like 2022. They have to, at some point negotiate a new deal with him.
Yeah. Or, he could end up in pinstripes.
After 2022, I should say. Yeah.
Right. Or he could end up in pinstripes. I mean, not to use that as a to pick on you, but I mean, honestly.
No, you said that. You said that,
I said that with all the love in my heart, Russ.
You wouldn't have said that if New Jersey didn't win the gubernatorial election. If it had turned out differently, you wouldn't have said that. That's my prediction.
That has absolutely nothing to do with it. But yeah, Virginia, by the way. But no, but no, it's like, okay, he has been, he's been paid well by the Mets. But, I mean, honestly, it's like, what have they won with him there? It's sort of almost like a Jack Eichel baseball situation. There's obviously the differences, but it's like you've won a couple Cy Youngs. You're the best pitcher in the game, and you've not, and your organization under two ownership groups hasn't been able to put, except for 2015, hasn't been able to put anything together, assemble a team rather. And now you've got the guy who's got more money than Elon Musk, and he's operating like he's a pauper.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean,
here's how deGrom's contract works. So he's got an opt out after 2022, and so for 23-24 he can make like $32 million each year, right? But my feeling is his agent's probably going to say, opt out. You're the best pitcher in baseball. And that's why it would just behoove them to negotiate a new deal and forget about 23-24. You know what I mean? Like that's what they should do.
That would be smart. And honestly, if they were willing to give Trevor Bauer what they offered him, and obviously the Mets are very lucky that they weren't successful. But if they offered him as a mercenary, then you should at least offer a guy who's been with your organization for, a decade? You should offer him that contract. He's the best pitcher in the game when healthy, and he's a difference maker. The problem is your team never scores runs for him because
but you have to believe that will change. Like, you can't, live and die with that.
I would hope, but I mean, I'm just saying it as a fact. It's like he's the best pitcher in the game, and I don't know. I don't even know how many career victories he has, but whatever he has, he should have at least 40 to 50 more.
It's going to be interesting to see where he ends up in the Cy Young voting, because even though he got hurt, he was still 7-2. He had a 1.08. I mean, again, 1.08 ERA, and he had 146 strikeouts.
That's like Three Finger Brown or Ed Walsh numbers.
Yeah.
Like pre-1920, spitball era type stuff. Yeah.
I mean, he had 146 strikeouts in 92 innings. Like, he's going to get some votes.
Yeah. I'm sure there are people out there that play Stratomatic baseball. I'd love to have his card next year. He'd be a really nice ace. Holy moly.
It'd be unbelievable. So I think he'll get some votes for that too. I don't think he'll win, but that's really what the Mets should do for him. I mean, to me, it makes the most sense, and do it while everything else is going on. So this way, there's no possible way that something could get screwed up with all of this. That's just my feeling. And like you said, and then this way, if they want to bring in another pitcher, then there's no worry about what you're paying the other pitcher because you've already cut your deal with DeGrom.
Right.
Like, to me, that's the right way to do it. But this is the Mets. They may not do it that way. As far as the Yankees, do they have anything hanging out there like that?
Well, I mean, it definitely sounds, and this could be a negotiating ploy, but it definitely sounds like Anthony Rizzo. There's mutual interest in Anthony Rizzo coming back, and I think that would be a good thing because
I could see that.
Yeah, they definitely need a left-handed bat in the lineup with all those righties, and he seemed to, adjust to being a Yankee very easily. Now it's a question of how many years, how much money, but they did get under the luxury tax this year, so if it stays the same, then they won't take as much of a penalty by signing him or re-signing him to a new deal. I think there's going to be some significant movement. I mean, the whole gist of the Cashman staying and Boone staying, and they basically threw the rest of the the hitting coaches and the base coaches under the bus. So they're saying, okay, we're gonna change the players and we're gonna mix up the coaches, but everything else is pretty much going to stay the same. More than likely the Gleyber Torres playing shortstop is over with. He's going to move to second. Probably LeMahieu is going to either play third or be that roving guy who plays a number of different positions but plays every day. Just, he's got that ability to be a rover. They may move Urshela. They may move Luke Voigt, but they're going to get in on one of the big shortstops, either Correa or Simeon or Seager, or I think it's going to be Trevor Story because Trevor Story and LeMahieu are best buds, and he's an excellent defensive shortstop. The only negative about Trevor Story is he's another righty, and it's like you can't have a lineup of 8 righties. You have to have, I would say, at least 3 lefties in the lineup, and and Aaron Hicks until Aaron Hicks has his,
especially in that stadium, you want 3 lefties.
Yeah. But you need to break up that lineup. You can't have a right-handed lineup and have a righty who gets out righties, and then it's impossible. But yeah, I mean they need at least 3 lefties and Aaron Hicks until Aaron Hicks has his next season-ending injury.
Yeah, and we'll flip back to the Mets for a minute because the Mets have 2 qualifying offers. I honestly don't think Conforto will take his, so I think he'll go to free agency, and I do think Syndergaard will take his. He's pretty much said he would, so I think once the Mets make it, I think that'll happen. So I think those 2 things will happen. I don't know if the Yankees have anybody like that.
I know they have to qualify Gary Sanchez. He's not a free agent because he's still under control.
Will he accept it? That's the question.
I think he will because, honestly, he hit 210 last year. So it's like, unless he just doesn't want to take the abuse anymore in New York of being – I mean, he is not the catcher that they thought he was going to be 3 years ago. They thought he was going to be a 270 to 280 hitting, 30 home run hitting catcher.
How about just catching the ball?
Right. He's got power. He doesn't hit for average. He's not particularly clutch, and he could be one of the worst defensive catchers in baseball.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
When Kyle Higashioka is your option in the playoffs for 2 years in a row. I mean, they did play Sanchez more this time around. They played him in the playoff game for a little bit because Higashioka was the personal catcher for Garrett Cole. It's a problem. So, I mean, they'll keep him because it makes sense to keep him because he'll be relatively cheap. But I think that, they're going to look for somebody who can supplement his contribution as catcher because it's just not enough.
And then pitching wise, what are they going to do for pitching?
Well, I mean, I don't think they're bringing Kluber back. Tyone is going to be out supposedly until May with an ankle surgery. Severino is back now. They didn't build him up so he could go back into the rotation late in the season. He was mostly a reliever, but he'll build up his arm to lengthen him, stretch him out so he can be a starter next year. But he's coming off of Tommy John, so I don't think you can just slot him in as the number 2 behind Cole and say, okay, that's it. I mean, I think they're going to have to baby him a little bit in the season. So I think they're going to be, along with Montgomery and I think they're probably going to need 2 starting pitchers. That's why I think they could be in on Marcus Stroman because Stroman was a veteran of the American League East. And now I don't know if Stroman's act will work with the Yankees because honestly,
they're going to want to get him on a short-term deal, and he's not going to sign that this time. He's
right,
not.
But I think the overriding problem is Stroman is a jerk. I mean, he's a jerk on social media. He's got an attitude. He's got a big mouth. And, in the past, the Yankees haven't had problems with players with big mouths like Reggie Jackson, but that was 40 years ago. I think they're very straight-laced and they're very
well, they're not that straight-laced. I mean, Brett Gardner and Garrett Cole sort of got into it about the spider tack, even though it seemed like a joke at first, and it seemed like Cole took offense to it.
I think Cole took offense to it because at the time that it happened, he had 2 or 3 bad starts, and he was taking it from the media, and he was taking it from all, and he didn't want to have to be taking it from his own teammates. So, Gardner's there, and I don't, but then, honestly, he pitched great until he got hurt in September with his hamstring, and then we saw how he pitched the rest of it. So, honestly, I can, as a short-tempered Italian, I can understand having your teammate pick on you for something and wanting to punch him in the nose.
Well, I give Cole credit, though. He really did handle the media well. He was out in front of everything and was willing to speak about it. And so I have respect for him for that because there's plenty of pitchers that would have tried to hide behind the Yankee insignia for that and just not really say anything. He didn't do that. So I give him credit.
Owned it.
Yeah.
He definitely owned it. And, but Cashman knows that this team was flawed. At the deadline, he brought in Joey Gallo, which was, I think, a disastrous move, even though he didn't give up much for him because he hit 160. And I don't know whether Joey Gallo was somebody you can really depend on. They could flip him and move him out and go out and sign somebody else or trade for somebody else. But, they like I said, they need at least 3 lefty bats in the lineup.
Yeah, and one of the fun stories now that the Mets have relieved Zach Scott of his duties is we found out finally what had really happened with Lindor and Jeff McNeil of the Mets, and Lindor had him by the throat down the tunnel that time. And and of course Lindor tried to make light of it, and then a couple days later they made up and they were together. Now Met fans always thinking that there's something behind this, like, hey, they're going to get rid of McNeil, and that's why they let this out there. I don't know. I think it's more like Zach Scott just sort of let it out there because he's got nothing to lose at this point because he just got dismissed. So I think that's why the story's out there.
Well, I think Zach Scott should buy some stock in Uber.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. But at any rate, I think the Mets would be dumb to get rid of McNeil because he's under control for like 3 or 4 more years. and he's a really good hitter. The problem is this year, when they had all the problems with the different hitting coaches, I was told they have a different hitting philosophy between the two hitting coaches that were there and between their swing coach. So we heard all about the swing coach thing where Sandy Alderson sends him to this guy, and, Justin Turner talked about it. Just Google it. It's a crazy story. But they had their swing guy, and he's different than the Mets' current hitting coach, who actually isn't the hitting coach anymore because they let go everybody but Jeremy Hefner, the pitching coach, but was the guy. And it was like Hugh Poggebaum or something. He sounded like, a Batman villain. He didn't sound like a baseball player. But at any rate, so I think that screwed up McNeil, and he was hurt all year. He pretty much was playing injured, and he did the best he could. So I think they really need him back. Robbie Cano will be coming back. He's playing in winter ball, and he's not hitting very well the last time I looked. We'll see if he picks that up.
Just write him a check and tell him
you can't do it. It's too much money. It's like 30-something million.
Sure you can. It's friggin' tip money for Mr. Cohen.
Yeah, but you don't want to do that. I don't think that's a good idea.
Okay, I have
just a utility guy. Just do it.
I have an idea. Designate him for assignment. Let Tampa Bay pick him up, and then or Oakland, like your buddy Jed Lowry, and then he'll hit 300.
Well, I guess that's a possibility. By the way, people can go to Sportsology and read about the best and worst baseball cities. Oakland ranks really high as one of the best. It includes fan engagement and other things. So I implore them to check it out. But I'm going to feel bad when Oakland moves because there's no reason, for them to be moving. None.
Well, there's a reason for them to be moving. It's that they can't get a ballpark built in Northern California. I mean, they've run into interference from the San Francisco Giants, and now
that's the problem.
Right, and and they've always been second fiddle in the Bay Area to the Giants, except for in the early 70s when you had Reggie there, and they the Giants weren't very good. And then obviously the two teams met in the series, or the earthquake happened. But I mean, it's still, that area is mostly a Giants area. I mean, the ballpark.
Sure, but this is a good fan base. It is.
Yeah. But but they've been operating under the Moneyball, Billy Bean, nickel and dime stuff for 25 years? Yeah. You have ownership there that really doesn't want to invest a ton of money in that team. And, yes, the fans are there, and maybe they deserve for that team to not move. But if the Vegas is going to build them a brand spanking new baseball stadium, or if there's one already there, they're gone. I mean, they've been sort of pushing this along for a decade at least. And, once you get to the point where, it's just at loggerheads that nothing is going to happen in regards to a new stadium, then you can just forget it.
I got to tell you, unless Oakland fans are going to fly to Vegas, I think it's going to be a failure. I think the Golden Knights still have people's hearts. I think the Raiders are an easy sell because it's, every once in a while.
It's 8 games a year. No, that's the challenge. It's 81 games in the desert. I mean,
81 games, and even if you build small, it's still going to be 35,000,
81 games in the desert, and you better build a dome, or at least a retractable dome, because it's going to be 90 to 100 degrees. I mean, it has to be a dome, because I don't think anybody is going to want to sit out in 95 to 100
Although they
degrees.
Used to with the 51s used to play, they used to do it.
Yeah, but people used to sit at the stadium where the Rangers played.
The Arlington. Yeah.
The stupidity of some people. Nobody today is going to sit through 4 hours, and you'll have dead people off in the stands.
Yeah, you almost died at a Yankee game in 90-degree heat.
No, I almost died at a Blue Jays Astros game in 85-degree heat because I was melting. I mean, let's just say I worked myself up into a lather, booing Jose Altuve, who, by the way, hit a leadoff home run. That little midget.
All
He's a
right.
great
Well,
player, but anyway.
I get it. No, I totally get it. That's it. That's it for the game. We'll catch everybody next time.
My man.